What if I told you that there are places on this planet so dangerous that even the bravest people think twice before stepping foot in them? Countries where survival is a constant battle, where chaos and conflict rule, and where danger lurks around every corner. Stick around, because what you're about to discover will shock you and completely change the way you see the world. Are you ready to dive into the heart of the most perilous places on Earth? Number 10. Yemen, once a cradle of rich history and culture, is now engulfed in one of the deadliest and most destructive wars of the 21st century. Since 2015, the civil war between Houthi rebels and the Saudi-led coalition has caused widespread devastation, leaving millions trapped in a humanitarian crisis. Over 20 million people are in dire need of humanitarian aid, and starvation has become a daily reality for many. The destruction of infrastructure and the relentless violence have made Yemen one of the most dangerous countries in the world, with no end in sight to the suffering. Number 9. Sudan, a country that once symbolized hope for peace in Africa, is now a battleground for violent conflict and instability. After the fall of former dictator Omar al-Bashir, Sudan plunged into chaos, with clashes between the army and various rebel factions. The war has turned entire regions into war zones, and millions of civilians are caught in the crossfire. The country faces an acute food crisis with widespread famine and a shattered healthcare system, making it one of the most perilous places to live in today's world. Number 8. South Sudan, the youngest nation in Africa, has been mired in civil war and ethnic violence almost since its inception. The conflict between government forces and rebel groups has been brutal and unrelenting, leaving the population devastated. South Sudanese civilians face daily threats of violence, and millions have been displaced from their homes. The country's future remains uncertain as it struggles with political instability, human rights violations, and widespread poverty. It's a country where survival is a constant struggle, and the risks of war and death are ever present. Number 7. Afghanistan, a country that has been a center of conflict for decades, is now at the mercy of the Taliban's brutal regime after its return to power in 2021. The war against the Taliban, combined with terrorist attacks and insurgency, has left the country in ruins. Civilians live in constant fear of bombings and violence, and the country is grappling with a massive humanitarian crisis. Corruption, poverty, and a lack of infrastructure have made Afghanistan one of the most dangerous places in the world, with little hope for a peaceful future in sight. Number 6. Ukraine, once a peaceful nation at the heart of Europe, has become a front line in the ongoing war with Russia. Since the Russian invasion in 2022, Ukraine has been plunged into a deadly conflict that has resulted in thousands of civilian casualties and widespread destruction. The constant shelling, airstrikes, and military operations have left cities in ruins and millions of people displaced. The war has created one of the largest humanitarian crises in Europe, making Ukraine one of the most dangerous countries today, where every day is a fight for survival. Number 5. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, one of the richest countries in Africa in terms of natural resources, has also become one of the deadliest. The DRC has been embroiled in violent conflicts for decades, with various rebel groups, militias, and foreign forces fighting for control over its rich mineral wealth. The violence has led to millions of deaths and the displacement of even more people. The country faces a complete breakdown of law and order, and the constant threat of violence makes the DRC one of the most dangerous places in the world. Do you want to know more and more about the unknowns of the world? So be sure to subscribe and like this video. Number 4. Russia, a major global power, is facing unprecedented internal and external threats. The ongoing war in Ukraine has exacerbated tensions with the West, and the country's political and social stability is increasingly under strain. Corruption, violent suppression of protests, and a growing authoritarian regime have created an environment of fear and uncertainty. The war with Ukraine has brought Russia to the brink of economic collapse, and daily life is filled with risks of further conflict and civil unrest, making it a dangerous place both internally and on the global stage. Number 3. Syria, once a peaceful and culturally rich country, is now a devastated war zone. Since the start of the civil war in 2011, Syria has experienced brutal conflict involving multiple foreign powers, government forces, and rebel groups. Cities like Aleppo, Damascus, and Homs have been reduced to rubble, and millions of people have been forced to flee. The war has left the country with shattered infrastructure, widespread poverty, and a dire humanitarian crisis. Every corner of Syria is a reminder of the brutal reality of war, and survival in this war-torn country is increasingly uncertain. Number 2. Israel, located in one of the most volatile regions of the world, constantly faces existential threats from both internal and external forces. The ongoing conflict with Hamas, frequent terrorist attacks, and military operations create a climate of fear and instability. While Israel has one of the most advanced military forces in the world, the constant threat of violence, suicide bombings, and regional conflicts make daily life tense and precarious. The country is in a perpetual state of alert, and the future remains uncertain as tensions with neighboring nations escalate. Number 1. Mali, a country in West Africa, has been trapped in a cycle of instability and violence for years. The rise of Islamist insurgents and Tuareg rebels has led to ongoing conflict with vast swaths of the country controlled by armed groups. The military junta that took power in 2021 has been unable to restore order, and Mali remains in a constant state of unrest. Terrorist attacks, kidnappings, and raids are frequent occurrences, and the international community has struggled to bring peace to this war-torn country.